Welcome to the Dad Nation podcast, where men go from good to great in their life and love. Now more than ever, our world needs strong, courageous, and compassionate men, because we believe that when the dad gets better, the whole family wins. Now, this movement is called Dad Nation, but ultimately this is for the wives, the children, and the generations to come, because we also believe that every wife and child deserves a father who is pursuing greatness. I am your host, Mitchell Osman, and I am so grateful and I'm humbled that you've chosen to spend your most precious resource, which is your time, with me today. Listen, today we've got another incredible episode for you, so let's get into it. Well, welcome to the Dad Nation podcast, Ted. Listen, before we jump in, I want to read your bio to the listeners, because some of them who have been listening may not have heard of you and what you're up to, but I know that they will after we chat today, and they're going to want to follow you and understand a little bit more. But here's a little bit about Ted and just kind of what he's been up to. So Ted Phaeton is a husband. He's an author with a passion for helping men unlock their full potential through productivity, time mastery, and leadership. As an Emmy award-winning morning meteorologist at Queen City News in Charlotte, North Carolina, Ted understands the power of structure, discipline, and efficiency. And as the host of the Modern Man podcast, which is a globally ranked 2% podcast, Ted is on a mission to connect men in the pursuit of their greatest potential through his coaching and his online master community and a bunch of other things. And so we're going to get into that. But listen, Ted, thank you so much for being on the show today. Can't wait to dig into this, brother.
Yeah, Mitchell, thanks for having me. To the audience, I appreciate the time. I promise to respect it, and can't wait to hop into the conversation and share a little bit about what it means to be a man in here in 2025 and really into the future.
Yeah, man, I'm looking forward to digging in. So, but before we do, where there's that bio, and obviously, we'll unpack that a little bit more. I'd love to hear more about, the morning news and all that stuff. It's kind of fun, but tell us a little bit more about your life, man. What got you into this? What's the genesis story? Like, what made you start the Modern Man podcast, and what led you to where you are today?
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. If I could try and keep it brief, just scared little boy. I have a picture of young Ted held up for those that are just listening, not watching. Scared little boy, grew up in the world, and as I entered the adult world, still had the little traumas. And the little traumas was not feeling like I was worthy, people pleasing, nice guy, not setting boundaries, not shaking the feathers of those around me. Very timid, very shy. And while I experienced a level of success in life, it wasn't what I wanted. Right? I got what I was prescribed. Did what my parents said, put my head down, worked hard, got good grades, graduated, got a job, and didn't really like the job that I got because I got a degree in broadcast meteorology, not because I chose it, but because I was failing out of school with a with a degree in computer science. So 1.9 GPA freshman year, switched to meteorology because I was always good at science. Graduated, couldn't get a job, so I worked at a law firm, hated it, so I resorted to what most men resort to in their 20s, not fulfilled, the bottle. Started drinking, eating fast food. That put me in the hospital with the diagnosis of ulcerative colitis. Almost lost my large intestine at 23 years old. And that's the moment I recognized something's got to change. When the doctor looks at me and says, "How's your diet?" I said, "It's not good." He says, "How's your stress?" I said, "It's pretty high." He's like, "What are you doing to manage it?" I'm like, "Drinking." Doctor looked at me and said, "Hey man, you got yourself in this position." So thankfully, I did not lose my large intestine. The steroids and the morphine and all that helped me work through it. But I did lose 30 pounds in a month. I don't recommend that diet plan, but it worked. But I got out of the hospital, Mitchell, and the grass was greener, the sky was bluer, the clouds were whiter, and I had a different mindset. I decided to break up with the girlfriend I had at the time. I was living at home with my parents, working the job I hated, but embraced where I was, and got a raise at my current job. That raise allowed me to move out of my parents' house into a basement apartment. Then I was able to apply to jobs. I got my first TV job in Saginaw, Michigan, um, and that was literally within a year after I got out of the hospital. From then, I built my TV career and then still looked around and recognized I was still following the playbook that was made for me. And I started living with intention, and I decided I wanted to become more than what I was. No More Mr. Nice Guy was the book that I read that
Mm,
kind of changed the trajectory of how I treated myself and started setting boundaries. Those boundaries led me to a girlfriend, which became a wife. Led me to becoming an anchor, then led me to Charlotte, 16th largest city, as a morning meteorologist, and continuing to do the podcast and speaking to other business owners on how to be the best that we can be. The Modern Man was born just by leaning into other men who've poured into me to help me get to where I was. And that's
mm,
where I continue this mission today of connecting men in pursuit of their potential to make the conversations of intentionality and men stepping up into their best selves commonplace, front and center, because
mm,
there are a lot of good men out there that were not highlighted in my upbringing that I wish I could have learned from earlier on in life. And I just think as we continue to have platforms like yours and so many others, we can build a wave of men stepping up, being the best selves for their families, their communities, their states, and their country.
hmm. Wow, man, I love that. Thank you for sharing that story with us. It's powerful. It's powerful, man. You know, and
Thank you.
as you're sharing that, I was thinking, I don't know that I've ever talked with anyone who's done anything that's significant, or any guest on the show that hasn't had some pivotal turning point where it just got so hard and they hit a wall. They made a big mistake. They hit the rock bottom of rock bottoms. And the tension and the struggle, and then that pivot of like, I will take ownership, I will take full accountability, and I'm going to go all in on this because there is no other direction. And I think, especially as men, a lot of us have to get to that point before we're ready to make serious change. And I mean, my story is similar in the sense of hitting that. And listeners that listen to this show often would know my story, but hitting that wall of being completely broke, overweight, stressed out, and just being like, I'm done. I'm done living beneath my potential. I'm done living, in misery and anxiety and depression. And at some point, you have to take ownership. And I hear that turning point for you was almost losing your intestines, right?
Yeah, it's the acronym I'm just thinking of right now is my HDIGH moment. How did I get here?
Mm,
Right? And a lot of men find themselves there. And you mentioned you're a voracious reader. I am too. Dr. Joe Dispenza, Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself. I love how he mentions that there's two turning points. Either one is you see the trajectory in which you're going, you know this is not going to end well, and you change your behaviors. And then number two, which is unfortunately us as men being as stubborn as we are, or just as mission driven as we are, it's not until we hit the wall, rock bottom, or that how did I get here moment that we decide to change.
mm,
And it's powerful because to your point of blame, before the hospital, I blamed the economy for not getting a job that I wanted. I blamed being black for not getting the job that I wanted or being where I wanted to in life. I blamed everybody else except for myself. So when I'm laying on the hospital bed and the doctors ask me specific questions that I knew in my soul, the integrity I had to sit with myself was, I chose this life. Right? I'm living at home with my parents. They're cooking a well nutritious meal every night, but I'm stopping by fast food every night, going in my room, eating it alone because I didn't know it at the time or have the articulation of the emotion at the time, but I'm borderline depressed. I want to just be isolated. Waking up in the morning, throwing my pillow across the room because I'm angry. I have to wake up another day to go to work. Now I
mm,
wake up, it's 2:30 in the morning. It's not, I'm not happy. I'm not like Jubilee, but I love what I do. And people look at, you probably see my Instagram. I'm doing push-ups at 2:30 in the morning. Like, who are you? Right. But it's because I'm getting my heart rate up. I'm getting ready to attack the day. Completely different approach to life has given me a completely different outcome.
mm. Dude, I love that. I can't remember what the quote was, but I can't remember who said it, but it was if you don't make time for your wellness, you're going to be forced to make time for your illness. And I thought, man, that's so true. And that's not just physical, wellness. It's emotional, it's mental, it's relational. Your marriage breaking down, your body breaking down, your mind breaking down. And how are we making time today, right now, taking action, so we're not forced to make time for it later, that illness in those areas. And I love it, man. I love it. So I know you referenced Mr. No More Mr. Nice Guy. That's a book that I've actually talked about a couple times on the show here. I actually just recommended to one of my clients this morning, and I was talking to him about it. And like I had said to him, um, the cavalry isn't coming. No
Yeah.
one's no one's going to take the bottle from your hands. No one's going to take that cell phone out of your hands. No one's going to force you to get up and yank you out of bed. You're a man. You're a grown man. You have to do these things for yourself. And if you don't take ownership, nothing else is going to happen. You're going to get stuck reliving the same year over and over again until you die, and that's just what happens, right? And so, powerful stuff, man. What can happen when we take ownership and we when we ditch that victim mentality, So,
Mhm.
good stuff, man. Good stuff. So, I want to talk about obviously manhood, masculinity. Your podcast is called The Modern Man. I lead,
Yeah.
an Instagram and a podcast, obviously called the Dad Nation podcast. So we, I believe, are two people that can have a lot of great conversation about this. But the reason why I want to talk about it is because masculinity is such a hot topic in our world today. And a person's perception of what it means to be a man in our world today can really just depend on whatever comes up from their Google search, and
Yeah.
the word itself is so polarizing, and it seems so it's either over the top, like toxically masculine red pill swallowers, or it's like the soft weak simps of the world, and there's not a whole lot of middle of the road. I believe that masculinity is essential. I hope I don't get canceled. I think it's worth striving to understand and to live out. I believe that being a strong, wise, and noble man is a high and admirable calling, right? And I have a feeling that you do too.
Mhm.
So when we talk about the podcast, like the name, a modern man, what do you think? What would you say it means to be a modern man in our world today?
Yeah. And I love the question because I had to meditate on that because if I'm being honest, I had the name before I had the definition. It was something that sounded cool. It was like, I'm a man and we're in the modern times. And the question that me, my friends, my circle, when this all started was, and what does it mean to be a man in the modern world? And it was like, oh, modern man, the alliteration was great. But then as I unpacked it, I looked at modern. Right. And I love the fact that you said, that down the middle of the road, because for a lot of us, when I went down my own path of the kind of man I wanted to be, we often swing the pendulum before we settle into where we are. So I mentioned no, being the nice guy, right? I was the nice guy, the people pleaser, you could just walk all over me. And if I'm being honest, I swung the pendulum to the other side, red pill. And I quickly recognized the hurt that is emitted as hate, right? And while I was hurt, I wasn't hateful. So I came back a little bit. And as I looked at modern in itself is ever evolving. Modern in itself is constantly changing, keeping up with the times. And then you have man, which to me in its definition is foundational, it's structure, it's consistent. So to your point, a modern man is a foundational principled person, a man who is in tune with the modern times. And in what that looks like today, it's what I would call range. It's the ability for me to hold my daughter, love my wife, have my pinky out for a tea party, and then go to Muay Thai and get my face punched in, right? It's the range of the violence and the gentleness. and being able to sit in both confidently and enjoy it. There's bliss in solitude and silence. There's bliss in stillness, and there's also bliss in action. And I've learned how to navigate all that. And I believe much like a painter, if anyone's listening, and if you're a man listening, oftentimes we are stuck with just black and white. But imagine being able to paint with all the colors of the rainbow. It's a completely different picture. And I feel that being a man in today's day and age is stepping into what I would say is more of the traditional sense of a man: leadership, structure, action, providing, protecting. And then the other half is, are you emotionally in tuned? Do you create a safe container for you and your partner? Quick example, telling on myself. So I do these weekly calls, and I had a master class. A guest came in, had a whole master class. It went over. I get out of the master class and we put my daughter down, and I noticed my wife is a little short. I say, "Are you okay?" And she's like, "Well, I'm a little annoyed because I went over my time for the class, and we speak about time a lot. I'm a time mastery kind of guy, and I always defend my time with her, which allows her to defend my time doing what I do." But she was a little annoyed because I went over, and if I'm being honest, not the first time in the last month or so. Recently, I've been a habitual line stepper, Mitchell. Um, and she was quick to say, I'm a little annoyed at how long you've been taking on your calls. Instantly, heart rate goes up. You feel defensive. No, stop, breathe, respond, don't react, acknowledge, hey, I hear you. I understand that. I'm sorry. You're right. I have gone over these past few weeks. I imagine that's not respectful of your time and our time together. And it's very disappointing when you look forward to the 1 hour we get together after the call before I have to go to sleep. I promise to do a better job in the future. Did that solve it right away? No. She was still a little annoyed, a little ticked off. And I go get ready for bed and whatnot. And my wife's love language is quality time. But I also know for her, when she gets tense and all that, it's just the embracing, just embracing her does everything. So she gives me a kiss goodnight. She's out there and I'm going to bed. And before I go to bed, I said, hold on. I get up, I walk out. She's like, wait, what happened? I said, come here. And I just hugged her, just held her. And I said, listen, I am sorry. And then she's like, let me come in and lay with you for a little bit. Immediately, she's soft, she's forgiving, loving. She goes, I know, I was just a little upset, and I'm sorry too. She had nothing to apologize for. But that to me is me being able to stop the reaction of me having to be right, having no, tap into your emotion, understand how you feel, don't be reactive, don't be defensive, man up, deal with the consequences, and move forward. That's just one example that I'm thankful for, being able to have that range of both sides.
Hey, I promise we're going to get back to this episode, but I just wanted to take a few seconds to tell you about a free marriage course that I'm offering, no charge, and it's called Remodel Your Marriage. And it's a 4-step blueprint to understanding your wife, keeping your cool, and getting the fire back in your marriage. And in this course, we're going to dig into the 4 foundations that every successful couple understands well. And that's number 1, how to love each other well. Number 2, how to feel and how to communicate how you feel, how to communicate through conflict. Number 3 is how to fight fair and how to fight well. And then number 4 is how to have fun and to break out of that routine of becoming just really great roommates. And so if you're watching this and maybe you would say that your marriage is feeling a little stale, maybe needs a little remodeling or refreshing, all you need to do is head to dadnationco.com/remodel for that free course for you, my friend. I put a lot of time and energy into it, and I believe that it can help you transform your marriage. I believe in the marriage model. I believe in you and your marriage, my friend. All right, let's get back to the episode. Yeah, I love that, man. And I think what you're talking about is emotional awareness, is intuition, is humility. And I love the traditional side of the masculine in the sense of like what we're talking about, protecting, providing, and all those things. But I do think that, the one way that that model is a bit dated is in its ability to teach men how to become emotionally aware and intuitive. Because I would say a lot of those men in that, living, a couple generations back, maybe didn't have that emotional awareness, or weren't necessarily sensitive when they needed to be. And that's what I love about what I perceive to be healthy men today, who can sit in that balance, who understand that range, and have the humility to say, "I'm sorry. I see that I hurt you," and take ownership and say, "Hey, how can I make this right?" And genuinely seek to reconcile. And I think that's a powerful thing. But not a lot of men really have a good grasp on that, I think.
Mhm.
But the ones who do, they understand that that's not weakness, right? That's actually strength. The power of humility and coming to your wife when it hits the fan, or when you do something wrong, understanding that, and being, repentant, and also just seeking to reconcile, and taking ownership of your wrongs, right? I mean, that's massive. You talk about foundations as men, and in your experience working with men, both one on one and in groups and stuff, what are some foundations maybe that you see men sort of lacking in? Maybe they have shaky foundations, or they're coming to you because they want to grow or become stronger in any certain area. What are some common themes you see working with men?
Number one, I'd say is clarity. Men, a lot of us are just following the script, man. We're doing what we're told. We have a title, right? We've worked our way up the ladder. Our competitiveness has us climbing up a ladder on a job we don't even want to do anyway. So a lot of men I talk to, number one, it's the lack of clarity, right? I'm crushing it in sales. Congratulations, President's Club again. But all this money doesn't fulfill me, bro. What's going on? It's because you didn't have clarity on what you actually want for yourself, so you don't feel a sense of purpose in what you do, right? I believe clarity it leads to number two, which is intention. A lot of men don't have the intentionality in their lives. They wake up following again the autopilot that their body's in. Wake up, go to work, pay the bills, come home, kiss the baby, all that. What's your intentionality? Are you setting intentions with how your day is going to be? Are you setting intentions with what you're going to do with your wife at the end of the day? Are you setting intentions on how you're going to increase the quality of the time that you spend with those around you? I think clarity could lead to intention. And then number three is action. I see a lot of guys, and trust me, we were recording this right after the Super Bowl. Your boy likes sports. I watch sports. Don't get me wrong, but too many of us are in the trap of knowing every trade before the trade deadline. We know every player's stats, and we're tuned in to every sport, and we're managing our fantasy leagues, but we're not taking action on our purpose. We're not taking action on something for us because we, A, lack the clarity, the intention, so we don't take the action. And I believe when you have the clarity, you get the intention, you take the action, and then number four is you get the results, right? There's a lot of guys who are consistently doing something without moving the needle. You mentioned before, living the same year over and over again until we die, and I know your audience is likely familiar with the quote of, a lot of men or just people in general live to the age of 25, but they're not buried until they're 65 or 85. That's because we just repeat the same thing over and over again. And it breaks my heart. I'll tell you what scared me to death when I was working at this law firm before getting my job in TV. There was an older paralegal. She was training me on something on the computer. And I said, just making conversation. How long have you been here? She's like, oh, like 11, 12 years. I was like, oh, did you always want to be a paralegal? She was like, no, I graduated college. I started working here. And then I had kids. And next thing you know, it's 12 years. Mitchell, that scared the shit out of me. I don't know if I could curse on the podcast, but that scared me. I'm like, wait, what? But what we don't realize is the the days might be long, but the years are short. Fatherhood has certainly taught me that. And if you aren't living with clarity, intention, action and getting the results, you're gonna blink and 10 years goes by like that. And that's what a lot of us find ourselves in. Is guys look around, they're like, what happened with the last 10 years, bro? How did I get here? Back to that moment.
Hmm. Absolutely, dude. And I see it every day. I see it every day. I mean, I was that guy. I was that guy.
Same.
Yeah, a log in a stream. Just being pushed by the current. And then you wake up one day and you're like, how did I get here? And I think a lot of people think was this is this idea that by not making a choice, you're still making a choice. You're choosing to let culture, you're choosing to let time, you're choosing to let whatever push you down the current. And by not practicing intentionality, not pursuing clarity, not taking action, you will wake up one day and just not like where you are, and it might be too late. You know what I mean? And that is the heartbreaking thing. And it's like if you want to have a great marriage, if you want to have, you know, 12% body fat, if you want to be super confident, if you want to be a great dad, you don't just wake up and those things happen on autopilot. You know what I mean? They
Mhm.
happen by intention, by seeking clarity. What kind of man do I want to be? And how do I reverse engineer that into daily steps to become that person that I said that I want to be, right? And that's powerful, man. I love that. So now let's talk a little bit about some of your specialties because I know you talk a lot about time management. And did I hear you say that you wake up at 2:30 in the morning?
Yeah, 2:35, if I'm being specific.
And
Hey,
that's
that five
because
minutes is gold.
gold, Dad. So is that because you're the meteorologist, then you got to be up for that morning show, right?
Yeah.
So could you walk me through your daily, generally, like your daily routine, if you will?
Yeah, absolutely. My daily routine starts the night before. My clothes are laid out. I already know what I'm going to do. Like I always say, if you wake up and you don't know what you're doing that day, you're already behind. So the night before, my clothes, my shoes, tie, everything's laid out. I have a good idea. My schedule's already locked in. Alarm goes off. I wake up, brush my teeth. I go in, put my clothes on. I bust out 100 push-ups. I record that really quick, go out the door on my way to the elevator. I kind of set it up on Instagram, put it on my story. I drive into work. On my way to work, I listen to a Bible verse, a Blinkist book summary. I don't. I might record on my phone. I might listen to the Bible verse. I might listen to the book summary. I don't engage in any emails, correspondence, social media. I don't like anything entering my psyche for the first hour of the day. I know I'm the meteorologist. I get to work at 3 a.m. and they're like, "Hey Ted, what's up with the storm?" I said, "I have no idea because I haven't even looked at anything yet today." So that's one of my non-negotiables is unless it's like a text from my wife from overnight or a family member, there's a select few on the do not disturb. I'm not checking my phone before I get to work. I get to work 3 a.m. forecast, and then I do my show from 4 a.m. to 10 a.m. It's a 6-hour show. Come home after a post-show meeting. Usually I'm home around 11:30. I change, kind of, I settle, I reset my day. That's usually where I can journal, get a little breath work in, or just unpack the work, Ted, and then get ready to go to the gym. I'm usually at the gym by 12:30, done by 1:30, drink a shake, walk the dog. And then 2 o'clock, I'm recording the podcast, working on content, doing coaching calls, reaching out to chase leads, whatever it might be, until 5 o'clock, where I'll then spend some family time. Well, actually, 5 o'clock, I set up my clothes and stuff for the next day, and then I spend family time. If it's Tuesday, I'm making tacos with the wife. We spend time together. We'll watch a show, and I'm usually lights out by. I'll walk the dog at 7:30, and I'm lights out by about 8. So that's what my day looks like.
Oh, beautiful, man. That is beautiful. I know it's probably giving some people a panic attack after listening to it. Um,
Listen, really quick, if I may, because I believe this is video and audio.
yeah.
I show people this, and a lot of times they're like, "Oh my gosh, doesn't that give you anxiety?" And this is my schedule. Um, and oftentimes they're like, "Oh my God, does that give you anxiety?" I'm like, "No, actually, it gives me clarity." Actually, matter of fact, I had my work turned off. So that's really my schedule. You see the red, the pink, and all those colors. It's color coordinated. I do time blocking. And while people see that and they're like, oh my gosh, I can't. Two things. Number one, that gives me so much freedom you can't even imagine. And number two, those are tracks, not bars. And what I mean by that, I'm not in jail. I'm not in prison to that schedule, right? Every day, something can happen, right? Life happens, right, Mitchell? Like, we can't control if our kid gets sick or something. Life happens. But when we fall off track, most people have a hard time getting on track because they never laid the tracks down in the first place.
Mm,
This calendar is my track. So Tuesday might be a wash. I might have dropped the ball on Tuesday. We're all human. But best believe Wednesday, I have tracks to get back in line and get back to the plan. And the
mm,
the example I use for this is the Apollo rockets. The Apollo missions in their journey from Earth to the moon spend 97% of the time off course. They're only on course 3% of the time. But because they know their destination, clarity, they correct along the way and they land with precision timing. So again, when it comes to my time blocking or comes to anyone who's listening, when you set that clarity and that intention and you know where you want to go, you're not going to be perfect and you're going to spend a lot of time off course. But if you course correct along the way because you know you're going, you still get there.
mm. Yeah, that's it, man. I think you're the first person to ever say, because I say this all the time, I feel so seen because people look at my calendar or they hear about the things that I do and they're like, that's insane, man. That must be so stressful. I'm like, no, in fact, it's incredibly freeing and empowering because I'm in control of my schedule. I understand like every day is intentional. There's a plan and a purpose for everything that I do. Everything is timed, and that's actually motivating. It
Mhm.
empowers me. It doesn't like suppress me, kind of thing,
Yeah. And
which
it builds
I
presence.
yeah.
Like I believe it builds presence. Like everybody knows when you meet somebody, you meet a man, he shakes your hand, and you're like, oh, he's here. Like
He's
he's
here.
not thinking about anything else. He's here, and we can be here because listen, the my taxes, right? We got to do taxes. That time's allocated. I don't have to worry about it, right? Everything that's on my quote unquote to do list, I say in air quotes, it's allocated. So when I'm here on the podcast with you, Mitchell, I don't have to worry about anything else other than be here. And presence is so powerful.
100%, man. I love that you acknowledged that in the beginning of the show, saying, you want to respect time and bring value because time is the most precious commodity. We know this, you know this. I say this in the beginning of every single episode. And I say, hey, thank you for giving me your most precious gift, which is your time. 60 minutes is a huge deal. You're never going to get that back. So I better bring some value. I better show up and I better be eyes on and ready to go. Um, I got a feeling you might like this. Have you ever heard of Parkin's Law before?
No,
So
educate me.
so Parkin's Law states that each task you plan will grow or expand to the amount of time you give it. So, for example, think
Mm,
about when you're in school. At the beginning of the school year, you get your syllabus, and the professor talks about this paper that you have to do, and then that's not due for another 4 months. That research paper. But what student does that within the first 2 weeks? Of course they don't. They wait 2.5 months. And the last 2 weeks before the paper's due, boom, they hit it, right? Same thing with me if I'm planning, if I'm planning to prepare for, this podcast episode. And if I say I'm going to give myself 30 minutes to do it, and even though at the end of the day I know it's only going to take me 10 minutes, if I give myself 30 minutes, you better believe subconsciously I'm just going to use up that whole 30 minutes. Maybe I'll check my email, scroll on Instagram, do whatever. But if I give myself 10 minutes, then I'll get it done in 10 minutes. And so I have this timer here. It's a physical timer. This is the only thing it does is keep time. And then when I'm
mhm.
starting something, whether it's preparation or a coaching call or you name it, I tell myself how much time am I going to give this, and I set my timer. And the second that timer ends, I'm done. And I'll tell you what, man, 99.9% of the time, I'm wrapping up that task with like 10 seconds left on the clock. And what that does is it helps me stay so focused and present in the moment. And bro, like I 10x my productivity just by combating Cantor's law. right? And so I think so many men, if they actually allocate the proper amount of time and specifically intentionally time their tasks, they could get a whole lot more done. And just
Yeah.
a quick note: don't use your iPhone for a timer, because you know what's going to happen. You're going to jump on your phone, and before you know it, you're scrolling emails, you're on Facebook, and you name it. That's why, like, I literally suggested this to a client yesterday. I sent them the Amazon link to this timer. I'm like, listen, man, get one,
Yeah.
and it'll change your life.
I love that because I mean it's very similar to the Pomodoro technique, right? I have the timer on my computer, do not disturb. Now the Pomodoro technique, it's a focus technique. You set the timer for 25 minutes, you take a break for 5 minutes, because scientifically your brain works better in short bursts of effort instead of long drawn out tasks. If I'm trying to sit down and white knuckle a task or a big project for 4 hours, fatigue will set in at some point in time and my effectiveness will start to diminish. And at some point, it's just diminishing returns.
Mm.
However, with the Pomodoro technique, you build in strategic breaks. So 25 and 5 minutes, it's great for short correspondence or batching some tasks together. My favorite is also 45 minutes and a 15-minute break. My wife loves that because I can sit in here, close the door. I set up my lo-fi beats, my music. I put the timer on. I have my aromatherapy going on, usually like eucalyptus, peppermint. That helps kind of help me with the focus. And I go to town for 45 minutes. Then I open up the doors. Like, guess what, baby? 15 minutes. Let's go walk the park right outside. Get that family time. I get some nature in me. I get some fresh air, some vitamin D. I come back in, set the timer again, do it all over. I'm refreshed. I'm re-energized, and my output is even better as I continue. And that's really very similar to what you mentioned is understanding our biology and how our brain works also allows us to hack the process. And to your point, doing the Pomodoro technique helped me realize, oh, it doesn't take me 2 hours to do this task. I could do it in 45 minutes. Oh, it doesn't take me a full hour to answer all these emails. I could do it in 25 minutes. And just, I imagine it's the same exact psychological game where clock's ticking, bro. Get to work.
Mm. Well, yeah, exactly. How many hours have we given social media or Netflix that we'll never ever get back? I
Yep.
mean, that's an incredibly wasteful way to use this time. And as you said, the days are long, but the years are short. It's massive, man. I noticed you said lo-fi beats. I listen to lo-fi beats as well while I'm working because it just gets me tuned in, man. It's so good.
Classical, but it's lo-fi is some of my favorite too. Like I grew up listening to classical music, and then if you literally search in Google classical, but it's lo-fi, some of the most gangsta beats ever. Like you're talking about Beethoven with a good heavy bass, you can't beat
I
it.
love it. Did you know that over 70% of divorces in the United States are initiated by women? And in situations where the wife is the higher earner, that statistic goes to 90%. That means that 9 out of the 10 marriages that end in divorce have been initiated by the women in the relationship. What does that tell us? It tells us that we've got work to do. So I want to ask you today, have you been struggling in your marriage? Maybe you've been winning in the boardroom, but you've been losing in the bedroom. In your career, everything just seems to make sense, but when you get home, you can't quite seem to put the puzzle pieces together. Or maybe since becoming a dad, you've gained a bunch of weight, maybe 10, 15, 30, even 100 pounds. You see, all of this leads to frustration, insecurity, and just an eroded sense of self-confidence. Because deep down, you know you were built for more passionate marriage, a strong mind, and a powerful body. But you see, the uncomfortable truth is this: the way that you are living today will become the way that your son lives when he becomes a man. The qualities you exhibit in your marriage today will become the qualities that your daughter will look for in a man someday, either good or bad. Now, I help men win their wives back, lose weight, and develop unshakable self-confidence. And I do this by coaching them one-to-one for 16 weeks of intensive coaching. Now, this program is for men who have seen success professionally but are struggling personally. So if you're listening to this and you are a married man who's under 50, who's earning six figures, and has struggled with any of the things I've just talked about, then I want you to pause this episode and I want you to hit the link in the show notes below and book a complimentary session with me where I'm going to show you exactly what to do in order to get your life back on track. If there's a fire growing in your gut as you're listening to this, I want you to listen to your instincts, brother. Don't become another statistic. All right, let's get back to the show. I love it, man. I never thought about that. I listen to instrumental music because lyrics distract me all the time. Um,
Correct.
so so that's super helpful. I love that, man. That technique you're talking about. So tell me a little bit more. So what are some other things? So if a man's listening, and like I said, I have a lot of people who, whether they're clients or people who listen, who are business leaders, entrepreneurs, run multiple businesses, things like that. So time management is huge for them. And,
Hmm.
as the old adage goes, we all have the same 24 hours, right? And so
Yeah.
obviously this is one of your specialties. So tell us, if there's a guy listening today who's struggling with managing his time, as we all do, um, what's a couple other techniques that you can share with us today that can help us save time and be more productive?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I appreciate the opportunity. I built out a framework. I call it the AAA framework. Assess, adjust, apply. The assess is where it starts. And I actually had to use this framework two times after my daughter was born and I was building this Tools of Time course. So the assess starts with a time audit, an energy audit. You first want to understand where your time is going, identify bad habits. You also want to track your energy. Where in the day are you at your peak energy and where are you low? We're familiar with circadian rhythms. It's a 24-hour cycle when you're up, when you're asleep. But there's also ultradian rhythms, which are more in that 90-minute to 120-minute range throughout the day. When you can understand your ultradian rhythms, you'll understand when you're high energy, when you're low energy, and that will help you plan accordingly. So the assess is all about auditing your time, identifying where your energy levels are throughout the day, and then just getting all this data to then work with. That leads you into the adjust phase, and that's where I have four approaches to time: dump, delegate, organize, optimize, right? The dump, you just identified where your time is going. What habits aren't serving you, right? Where is your time being wasted? Where are you not being efficient with what you're doing? Dump it. Number two is delegate. Where can you push off the mundane, repetitive tasks, whether it's hiring a VA for video editing, filling out reports, anything like that? And then number three would be organize. How can you batch the actual similar tasks together and put it in the, again, high energy and low energy areas of your day, right? We're talking about doing deep work when you're high energy and you're high focused and creative. And then we're talking about answering emails and stuff when you're low energy. And then finally, optimizes the Pareto principle, 80-20 rule. Identify the 20% of effort that is yielding your 80% of results and double down on that because that's what's going to push the needle. And then the last part is the apply. And that's where you could do things like we mentioned lo-fi beats. Helps keep your brain waves in a susceptible, focused pattern, right? The lo-fi beats are helpful. I mentioned aromatherapy, rosemary, peppermint, eucalyptus. These are scents that will help inhibit focus and memory. Think about if you have let's say, so growing up, I grew up in Long Island. There's this place called Pita Pizza. It was a pizza place that I used to get penne alla vodka from. It's such a distinct smell. If I smell penne alla vodka, I remember my childhood, right? The nostalgia. That's the power of the brain that scents have. So when you use aromatherapy, you could actually enhance your focus, clarity, and your memory. So I use things like that for the apply phase in terms of the aromatherapy. Declutter. Oh my gosh, declutter. Get everything off of your to-do list on in your head onto a piece of paper. Clean your workspace. You have a very clean background. I imagine your desk looks very similar. If you have all the stuff around your desk, it's all fighting for your cognitive energy. Clean out the clutter. And then make sure you have a good capture system, whether it's if you're familiar with the Eisenhower Matrix. Eisenhower Matrix is a four-quadrant box. If it's important and urgent, you do it right away. If it's important but not urgent, you schedule it. If it's urgent but not important, maybe you delegate it. And if it's not urgent or not important, get rid of it. So that's a great tool, Eisenhower Matrix. I also am a big fan of the P.A.R.A method, and some folks not might not be familiar with it. I use it with my Notion app. The P.A.R.A method, it breaks down four categories for all your tasks: projects, areas, resources, archives. What are projects? Projects are things that have a deadline to it. So if I'm working on my Tools of Time course, that's a project, right? Or let's say if the CEO is listening and they have a product release coming out, that's a project. Now, projects fall in areas. Areas are areas of life that have consistent focus: health, business, marriage, all of that. So you have projects within the areas, and then the resources are things that might be interest or not of use right now. Like I'm learning the piano, I'm learning chess. If I have articles or things like that, that goes in my resources, something that could be useful to me somewhere down the line. And then finally, archives are things that I have no longer use for, or some things I can put away if I need to pull up in the future. That helps me organize the tasks that come in. The Eisenhower Matrix could help me set the priorities to it, and then I can have a clarity of my list and execute accordingly.
Hmm. Love that, man. Love it. So we could just end the episode right there, and we just gave these guys like 10 years of experience and knowledge and time management tools. Dude, you just unpacked so much, which is
I
fantastic.
did.
And you know, a lot of the things that you mentioned are also things that you talk about the Eisenhower Matrix, right? Do, decide, delegate, delete. That stuff is fantastic. And so if you're listening to the show and you struggle with time, and you're finding yourself getting behind, I mean, to pause it, rewind it, maybe slow it down 0.75, take some notes, and listen to this, man, because if you just implement the things that we just talked about in the last 10 minutes, it'll change your life, man. Well, listen, Ted, this is awesome, dude. And I want to respect your time because time is important, as we're saying. But I did want to ask you one last question before we wrap things up here. Because dude, I know, man, I could talk for another 2 hours. But I ask every guest this question on the show. And it's a little bit morbid, but stick with me here. I have a feeling you'll like it.
Mhm.
Because so I think about my death often because I believe that the more I'm faced with my mortality, the more it informs me on how I ought to live while I'm here, while I'm, here on earth. And so I want you to picture for a moment that you said you have one kid, right?
Yeah.
What's their name?
Savannah.
Savannah. Okay. So you pass away, okay? And your wife and Savannah, maybe she's a little older, 12, 13 years old, and the memorial service is over, and your wife and Savannah are sitting around the table, and um, and they're just reflecting, on Dad,
Mhm.
Ted, the man he was, and you have the opportunity to be kind of like a fly on the wall, if you will, or have an out of body experience, and you can overhear the things that they're saying about Dad, and the husband Ted, and who you were, and the father you were, the husband you were. What are some things that you would want Savannah to say about the dad you were while you were here with her?
Oh man. There, first and foremost, I was there. Um, I was not just there physically, but emotionally, intellectually. I wanted to learn everything I didn't know. I wanted to remember me as loving, strong, teaching, and just madly in love with her mom. You mentioned something before, and I wrote it down in my journal a while back. I said I had to decide the type of man my daughter would look up to. Um, and that's someone who's grounded, passionate, empathetic, but most of all, love. Love, man. I mean, and we say that here in a masculine setting. Love, bro. I want my daughter to know love because I gave it to her in a way that she could never quantify.
Hmm, that's good. It's a good word, brother.
I appreciate it. And I do want to say time is the only currency we spend. without knowing our remaining balance. And I am appreciative that we spent the last 60 minutes together, brother. And to
Mm,
the audience, I appreciate that they gave me that 60 minutes as well.
mm. You know what you mentioned about your daughter, the man that you are, right now, the husband you are, you're teaching her, you know, how you love your wife right now will be the love, the relationship that she craves when she becomes a young woman. That is heavy. And a lot of times I say, don't let that feel too heavy. In this situation, if you're listening, feel the weight because that's significant, right? And if you have a son listening, the man you are right now is teaching your son, and he will grow up to be that man, unless he makes, a significant departure, which in your case, my case it was the situation, but that's statistically very, very unlikely. Hey, we're going to get back to the episode, but while I have you here, I wanted to ask you, would you consider helping a brother who's struggling in his life right now? Maybe it's a guy searching the internet to help save his marriage, his health, or his family. Maybe it's a man that's just behind you on this journey. And we know, statistically speaking, there are thousands of men doing this, and we know that there are probably men in your social circles that are struggling with some of these very same things. If you'd be willing to help, this is how you can help, and I promise it'll take less than 60 seconds. If you've gotten any value from this podcast so far, would you be willing to give us an honest review and subscribe to our channel, whatever channel you're listening on? If you want to take this to the next level, would you consider sending this link to a friend of yours who you know would benefit from listening to this show? Now, why would you do that? Because the more men that hear this content, the more marriages we can save, the more fathers we can help step up, and the more lives that we can change forever. This isn't just for the men. This is for the wives, the children, and the generations to come. So I want to say thank you so much for doing your part to help other men find the support that they need. Now let's get back to it. And so powerful stuff, man. Powerful stuff, Ted. So thank you for sharing that, man. I love that. It gives us as listeners a glimpse into your heart, the heart of the father, the heart of you as a husband, and it's powerful, man. So last question for you: where can we find you? Because I know this conversation has been powerful, and I know that guys are going to want to get a hold of your resources and kind of start to follow you or whatever the case is. So where can we find you? How can we support you?
Yeah, no, I appreciate the opportunity. TheModernManPodcast.com. That's the source to the links to the podcast. And there's a link there to the Noble Knights as well. TheModernManPodcast.com/The Noble Knights. You can get the landing page for that. Instagram is just The Modern Man Podcast. That is where you can find all my stuff and everything that you need. And the community, the Noble Knights, it's free to join. And that's just a community of guys all getting after it, sharing with each other 4 pillars of growth that we focus on: time mastery and productivity, health and fitness, relationships and leadership, and of course, business and financial growth. So very similar to you, just a lot of guys elevating their capacity for life to be the best men that they can be. And I love platforms like this. Mitchell, your audience, I can't thank you guys enough for who you guys are. The fact that you spent the last 60 minutes listening to this, I could already tell the kind of men that you are. And we need more men like you out in the world. So go out there and get them, fellas.
Awesome. Okay. Thank you so much for being on the show, Ted. We'll catch up soon. Wow, what an incredible episode. Listen, if you are watching on YouTube today, I want to hear from you, okay? Leave it in the comments below. What was the big takeaway for you? What was that big aha moment? And let's start the conversation. If you've listened to this episode and you've decided that you want help today, if you need coaching, if you need some resources, feel free to please reach out to me. My email is mitchell@dadnationco.com. My website is dadnationco.com. You can hit me up on Instagram @dadnationco. And I've got a ton of resources for you. I'm here to help you, support you in any way I can, and to serve you in a powerful way. So check those links. I'll have them posted below. But other than that, listen, I'm here for you. I'm in your corner. Have an incredible week. We'll catch up soon.